Does the third book in a trilogy always deliver? Nope. But does Supernova, the third book in the Renegades trilogy, deliver? Well, let's see. For those of you who saw my review on Arch Enemies, that's book 2 in the Renegades trilogy by Marissa Meyer, you know I gave it a tepid 4 out of 5 stars. It was really more like a 3-star read for me, but then I decided to take into account that I'm not really the target market for these books. And perhaps the teenage angsty love dynamic between the main characters, perhaps that was done exactly as intended. And so I rounded up to that 4-star read. But even if you put aside my concerns with the teenage romance angle, there were still some problems with Arch Enemies. Mainly, it was kind of slow and boring, and we spent a lot of time plodding along. I really felt like that book kind of fell into the trap that a lot of book 2s fall into, meaning they're not as fresh as that first book in the trilogy, but they don't want to give a big bang because they're saving that for book 3 in the trilogy. And so oftentimes these book 2s get stuck somewhere in the middle, where they're trying to set up book 3 for this grand finale. Well, I'm happy to say that Supernova, book 3 in this trilogy, really improves on book 2 kind of across the board. Where Arch Enemies was kind of boring and plotting for much of it and then had a small bit of action at the end that was really quite good, I feel like Supernova is kind of action-packed from beginning to end. They're not all fight scenes or combat sequences, but there's a lot of tension within the book. And I think Marissa Meyer does a really good job with making sure that nothing quite goes according to plan. I know tropes are a trope for a reason. They're things that we get interested in and they typically deliver. And I think in some cases, Marissa Meyer really avoids some of those tropes, and that gives us the opportunity to experience some new angles on this superhero genre, or something different than she's delivered in the first 2 books. Now, there's one thing that I really have to give a big caveat to, and it's a little bit difficult for me without giving away any spoilers, and I want this to be spoiler-free. So let me try to say it this way. To really enjoy this book, I think you have to suspend belief for one specific thing. And I'm not talking about suspending belief so that you can believe there's superheroes and supervillains. We've done that already. The second we pick the book up and agree to read a superhero book, we're suspending belief in that. No. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about suspending belief and just accepting the fact that an entire superhero organization can be completely stupid and utterly moronic. They have been on the search for a certain suspect, we'll say, for a long, long time. And in any other scenario, if all the clues and everything points to a certain suspect, then they're probably going to be treated as a suspect. This has to be delivered to them on a golden platter, and even then, there's so much disbelief that it's all undermined by a stupid, really lame explanation by another supervillain. And I can't really give you much more details than that without giving you a spoiler, but suffice it to say, it would be nearly impossible for an entire superhero organization. It would be impossible for an entire organization of any kind of mediocre hero level to have ignored all the clues in this one regard. And so when I was reading the book, I just kind of up and decided, you know what? I'm just going to accept it. I'm going to accept that this is what would likely happen, even though I don't believe that to be what would likely happen. And I did that, and I enjoyed the book a whole lot after that. So I spent a little bit of time in the book just kind of really focused on this one thing that I really didn't like. And I do think it's a big thing. I do think it really detracts from the story, but it was just one thing. And I said, if I can release my angst at this one thing, perhaps I'll like the rest of the book. And for the first time that I can think of ever in my reading, it worked. It worked. I just decided to accept that and went along for the ride for this last book. And the truth is, it was really, really enjoyable. I do have one other small complaint that I want to register before I talk about the things that I really liked about this book. And this is really a preference thing. I may tell you this as a reason why I kind of didn't like, or a facet of this book that I didn't like. And when you hear me explain it, you may very well be like, that is something I would really, really like. I really, really struggle with any book, and this is a trope we see in lots of books. I struggle with the trope of it's usually a teenager or child feeling obligated to be loyal, or they feel obligated to support a family member or a adult mentor figure for really bad reasons, even when that adult or mentor requests them to behave in evil ways. And I really struggle with that trope of, the adult figure saying, hey, you've got to go do this really evil thing. And then the subservient, in this situation, a young teenager saying, well, they are my whoever, they are my dad. I guess I better go listen to them. I really, really struggle with that kind of motivating factor for characters, and we see that in this book. Now, it's not a ton, to be fair. It is kind of underlined, it's kind of pervasive throughout the story, but we don't revisit that a lot, so it's not like in your face a lot. And so it's maybe a minor thing, but I just wanted to put that out there because I see that a lot in books, and usually it is a huge turnoff almost immediately for me. This one was somewhere in the middle. I really didn't like it, but it wasn't so in my face that it ruined the rest of the book. So there's that. Those are my complaints about the book. Let me tell you some of the things that I really, really liked about this book. Now, this book is a long one, but it really felt like a page turner. From page one, we were kind of off and running with a bunch of really fun and action-packed things. And when I say action-packed, I don't necessarily mean just nonstop fights or supervillains and superheroes fighting each other, but lots of twists and turns, decisions that had to be made, the ramifications of those decisions, a lot of tension in the book throughout, from page to page, where I felt like Arch Enemies was maybe 80% kind of setup and 20% action. This I felt like was easily 80% action with 20% things tying all those action scenes together, or all those tension scenes together. And so I really felt like as long as this book it was really still kind of a page turner, and that was really, really fun. There are two things that Marissa Meyer has done really well throughout this entire series, and I know I commented on them in my review for Arch Enemies, and that is that she delivers really likable characters. That doesn't mean that they're always good or noble characters, but they are likable, and then she delivers these heart-wrenching moments, and I think those two things are tied together. We don't get the heart-wrenching moments unless we care about the characters. And so, for example, this is not a spoiler. We know Agent N has been a thing from Arch Enemies, and we see that how it impacts some of the characters in this final book in the trilogy. And there's significant impact to several key characters, several characters that we care about, and that was touching. Those kind of stopped me in the moment, and it put a little sadness in this old black heart of mine. And that doesn't happen very often. So I really give her kudos for that. I know you hear me, I sound like a hypocrite because I'm like, teenage love, blah. But then there are some really nice, heart-wrenching moments, really touching, caring moments. And so there is some love in this little heart of mine. It's just kind of difficult to come out sometimes. One of the final things that I think Marissa Meyer did really well in this book, and perhaps she had been doing it all along, but I just wasn't paying attention. She really does a pretty good job of commenting on some real-world issues, mainly the way our society operates very frequently on just gaslighting entire groups of people and things like that. We see that in this book. We see that from some characters we saw in the previous book. These characters suck. I don't want to give any spoilers, but they used to be productive superheroes, and now they're just turds, man. And they continue to be turds. I guess they were always turds. They just continue to be turds in this one. But some of the way that is displayed, really, for me, it was a commentary on how our society functions, in particular the media and things like that. And that was kind of cool to see. I don't think we see that enough in young adult fiction, although sometimes we see it too much and it gets a little preachy. Again, I know I want my cake and I want to be able to eat it too. I like the way she did it in this book, so I'll say that. Overall, I would give this a non-tepid 4 out of 5 stars. This is not adjusted for the teenage romance that I didn't really like, inflation, whatever you want to call it. There's no adjustment here. This was just a solid 4 out of 5 stars. It was a really enjoyable book. There is one caveat, and that goes back to what I said before. You do have to be able, in my opinion, to suspend some belief in how things would have played out to really enjoy this book. Otherwise, I think you'll just be there screaming at the characters saying, "Are you guys dumb?" And I did do that some, and then I decided to let that go, and then the book became very enjoyable. What can I say? I'm an old man. I'm a little bit of a grouch, and for once I decided not to be a grouch, and it paid off. So maybe I'll have to do that more often, but I think I don't know that that's in me. So we'll see. But go ahead, if you have read Arch Enemies and you were kind of lukewarm on it, jump into Supernova. I think it is a very satisfying conclusion of this trilogy. The trilogy as a whole is solid. It is not the best trilogy I've ever read, but I would recommend reading it. It was fun and light, and we don't see enough superhero stuff. At least I don't feel like we do. And so this was a really good one. So there you go. I hope you liked this review. If you found it even remotely helpful or interesting or entertaining, please consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel. We do reviews here every week. We also have some additional content that you can see throughout the week, or throughout the month, I should say. You can also follow me on Goodreads, where you can see what I'm reading, what I'll be reviewing soon, and what will be coming up on this channel in the near future. Until next time, I hope to see you in the next video, and happy reading.